This is the
legs. Quarterback's legs.
Fakes left, now taking off. Gonna run for it, he got it! And there he goes! Inside the 10, the 5. Oh, the play of the year in the NFL! Quarterback legs it was.
I said no spy on this play. I can't believe it. The rare mistake by Kansas City. There's times.
Hey guys, got a quick video for you today. Had a request from Ghost of Adam Gase on X to make an exception this week and include the tight ends in my offensive line video. Couldn't really bring myself to do that, but I figured I would circle back and, kind of do a quick video going through some of the clips of the tight ends. Couple things to keep in mind here before we get into the video portion of it. Number one is that as well as these young tight ends did play, don't get overly excited about them, for 2025, because they are still using Dan Brunskill a lot as that sixth offensive lineman instead of a tight end. If these guys were really playing out of this world, I think you'd be seeing a lot less of that. So, just slow down a little bit. Number two is that Rucci and Dulcich play very different positions. Yes, they're both tight ends by label, but Rucci is more of your inline wide tight end. Think of him as a Julian Hill type tight end. And then Dulcich is your F tight end. So, moving around, a lot more of a receiving threat, a lot more of move type stuff. And you can think of him more like your Darren Waller. And I am, very much a Julian Hill, you could say apologist. I'm a big fan of Julian Hill. I felt like they kind of put a lot on his plate and that they've asked him to do some very difficult things compared to what other tight ends across the league are asked to do. And they kind of changed what they were doing there when they went to Brunskill, and now that they've gone to Rucci as that wide tight end. They're not asking the wide tight ends to be on the move and try to be in motion at the snap and blocking a target on the move. I think that's, that makes it more difficult for your wide tight ends. So I'm hoping that when Julian Hill returns, they stick with what they've been doing, letting them be a little more static, be just attached tight end and blocking on the edge. I'm interested to see how he can do in that role compared to Rucci. I think that Hill is still the better player than Rucci, but Rucci has, done some good stuff that we'll get into in the video portion of it. With this film review, I don't really care about receiving. Tight ends either can catch the ball or they can't. They're typically not your number one option. I mean, obviously a Darren Waller changes that a little bit, and Dulcich is going to be higher in the pecking order than Hayden Rucci, but not really, going to move the needle for me there. So in the film review, we're going to be looking at the blocking snaps. We're going to be looking at the run game snaps where they actually attempted to contribute something. So they might be on the back side of some of these, but, it's not going to be, just a run play where Dulcich is lined up in the slot and they run away from it, kneel down plays, just stuff like that. We're not going to get into absolutely everything. Going to try to find something on every video that we look at that we can discuss briefly. So the counts that we come out with is that Rucci had 11 of those plays and Dulcich actually had 14 of them. And when we go through, some of them are going to be repeats where both Rucci and Dulcich were on the field together. But we're going to go through the plays quickly. We're going to highlight the player that we're talking about, and then we're going to move on. So we are going to go through Hayden Rucci first, and then we're going to come back and go through the Greg Dulcich reps, and then we'll kind of summarize it as we get to the end. All right, let's get into the film review portion of this. So first play here, Rucci's lined up on the left side. He is going to come into motion. We are running outside zone to the right. So we're going to end up with Larry Borum. He's going to shift over here with the motion. We're going to put a combo here between Borum and Rucci, working up to that linebacker. So let's see how that looks. There's the motion. A little bit of a shift. And there's the snap. And as you can see there, pretty good job, right? Could have done a little bit better to hold him to the outside at the end there. But, that was more on Cole Strange than it was on Hayden Rucci. Does a good job there of the combo, getting to the outside. I would consider this a win for Hayden Rucci. Next one here is going to be what we call pin and pull. So Rucci is going to try to pin here. We're going to get a pin here, and then we're pulling to the outside. So not a great angle for Rucci on the pin for this, but really we want to be able to keep him to the inside here. And what we're going to see on this play is that Rucci gets into a decent position, but not really doing a great job anchoring against that defensive end. And eventually he's able to climb over the top and be part of that tackle. But you can see him having the right idea here. Just got to, develop a little better anchor there to be able to pin him on the inside. On this one, we are going to get outside zone to the right. And Rucci's back here on the back side of it. So he's trying to get his head across and seal number 92 here. In a perfect world, you'd cut this off completely. But what you'd really like to be able to see at least is to get the head in front and to create a little bit of vertical movement here. And we're going to see as the ball snapped here. This is a tough assignment. This is more of a defensive tackle. It's aligned to the outside there and reads it right off the snap there, slanting to the inside. So it makes it a really tough block. In the end, he does run the defender, past where Jalen Wright is looking to cut back on that. More of an issue on the front side that prevents the cutback, but would really like to see Rucci be able to get his head across right there and just be able to secure that a little better. Not a bad job, but room to improve on this one. This one is going to be an outside zone to the right. And Jordan Poyer here is not accounted for with the blocking. He walks up late. But what you're basically going to have is Borum and Rucci technically have the defensive end, and there's a outside linebacker that's out there that their combination block should be to. What we're going to end up getting is this defensive end spikes to the inside. So Rucci's never going to get a piece of him, and that's fine. He doesn't necessarily need to. But what you're going to see here, he's peeking out there now, and you can see as he comes off the ball, there's a little bit of a hesitation from Rucci, but he eventually gets into a good position with that. Ingle does a good job of switching his assignment from number 8 to 21. But you can see that you still have an unaccounted for defender because of Poyer walking up into the box. Not really the point of this video, though. We are looking at Hayden Rucci. So on this one, does a good job of not chasing that to the backside. He's able to get out here, seal that defender outside, and from his perspective, Rucci's doing a good job on this play. Almost a mirror play here again. So this is going to be Pat Paul and Rucci are combo blocking here and working out to the defender outside here. And what we're going to see is that this defender again slants to the inside. So Rucci does a good job of not chasing him to the inside. He's just going to get out here and seal. And here comes the snap. As you can see, he's kind of hesitating, maybe peeking out there a little bit to make sure the safety doesn't fly through there, but really that comes down to Ingold, right? We got Waddle coming from the outside as well. But from Rucci's perspective, obviously we'd like to see him stay a little more connected there through the end of the run, being able to get that right hand underneath there, but does a solid job of widening him out and giving Achane a chance to get through that lane. And this is going to be one of those plays that we have both Rucci and Dulcich on the same side. This is going to be a tackle trap. So all we're trying to do over here is to cut off. Again, we're going to look back at this for Dulcich again, but first we are going to look at how Rucci does. See, you got Milano walking up there, and Rucci does a good job from his part of stepping down as far as he can before he runs into Phillips and still being able to work up and, play gets tackled for a loss, but he's going to make Milano at least go over top of Phillips and not be able to slice through and have a clear path at that play. Next one here, so this is going to be a counter to the right. We've got Rucci out here. So basically we're getting everybody down blocking, and then we're going to get Ingold's kicking out here, and Jonah is coming around to lead. So really what we want to see on this is that Rucci's able to take this defensive end and slide him down there so that the kick out happens out there, right? And right off of Rucci's butt is where we're creating that lane. But we are going to see on this one that he gets beat pretty good on this one. So, right, he's stepping down. That defensive end's able to use that left hand, kind of long arm him and toss Rucci to the inside, creates traffic there, and ends up with the ball carrier getting tackled at the line of scrimmage there. So definitely an area of improvement here. Not the easiest thing for a tight end to down block on almost a head up defensive end. So not the easiest thing to ask for here, but something that needs to be able to do a little better than what he did here. Next one here is going to be a duo call. So we're going to get Pat Paul blocking down here. They're trying to go there. Going to get a double working up. So what we need out of Rucci here is to try to cut off this defensive end, similar to a block that we saw earlier when you're basically on the backside of this. And we can see on this one that Rucci's going to do a lot better job of it this time. So as he steps down, you can see that he's doing a better job off the snap of the ball, beating that defender off the snap, getting his head across. Right there, he's already in a good position. And now he can start to work vertical. And even though he's not able to, get a ton of vertical movement with that, he's still in a great position that as Achane is reading that he's able to seal this defender to the inside and let Achane run through that. It looks like Achane is cutting this through the back door, but when you look at where he takes this handoff, right, he's taking it at the hash mark, and, on first look, it looks like he's kind of bending it back, but because of how far Rucci washes his guy down, Achane's basically getting vertical directly on that hash mark. So really nice job by Rucci on this one. And now this is going to be an identical play. So again, we're comboing through there. And Rucci is trying to get down on Joey Bosa. Now, you don't have to always wash him down the way that Rucci did on the last play. If you can get inside and seal him, that's just as good. Again, you're creating that lane for Achane to be able to get vertical. But what you're going to see on this one, if we can get that out of there, is that as Rucci steps down here, he kind of gets backdoored by Bosa, who ends up making the play. So, bit of a learning experience here, right? Last one was able to wash that defensive end down. I think got a little overzealous here. Stepped too far, right? Leaned a little too much. Wasn't able to turn and seal that, right? If we're getting to right about here, right, and instead of falling over, if Rucci can kind of flip his hips and seal it, then Achane's probably going to hit that lane directly through there. Instead, Achane's really got to try to get through the back door of that, and doesn't happen. So just an area of improvement for Rucci. Not always going to be able to execute that block exactly the same. This one is going to be a pin and pull again. I think that Strange actually should have stayed, and he didn't, with Borum and Brewer getting out. So similar to what we talked about earlier, want to see him be able to see Rucci be able to pin this defensive end to the outside. And what we're going to see on this one is that as he's stepping down, he's a little slow getting there. And I mean, you got to try to make sure that defensive end doesn't slant to the outside. So I kind of get it. But at the same time, you have to be able to adjust, get your hands on the defensive end, and just kind of put pressure on him as you wash him by. Now, he worked out this time because Brewer was coming around and Brewer was able to pick it up, right? But if we're working towards the ideal scenario here, then, well, one, Strange stays home and pins number 96, and then two, that we can get Brewer out as well. So not the worst thing here. You want this defensive end to go to the inside. You just don't want to let him get that upfield penetration as part of that. And then last one for Rucci here. And this is going to be one that was a little bit later in the game. It was after the rain showers, touchdown by Achan. But you can see that as Rucci is coming into motion, he slips. But I do want to give him credit because after he slips, he is still able to get up and affect this play. And not only affect the guy that he was supposed to get, which I believe is Bosa in this scenario. I think that the idea here, I think what they were going for was that we were going to get a down block by Borum, seal it here, and then bring Dulcich around. We'll talk about Dulcich later, but you're going to see that Borum misses completely. Rucci slips, but Rucci kind of creates basically a human wall there and does a good enough job here, right? He's getting down to Borum's guy, and then we get a nice adjustment by Dulcich. And that's what, even though the play was not executed perfectly, that type of effort, that ability to get back into the play is what allowed this to succeed, in addition to Achan just being special in the hole there. But really like the effort here and the ability to make it back into the play. So as we come back, we will look at the Dulcich reps, and then, like I said, we will kind of summarize it at the end for both players. All right, so I was wrong. We do have one more for Hayden Rucci here. And this is going to be the other Achan touchdown run. And on this one, we're going to get Rucci. It's going to be a crack toss concept. We're going to get Patrick Paul around the corner here. But what we're looking for from Rucci is just to seal to the inside here. So we'll see as the play starts here. All right, that's asking him to go a long way to get there. But he does a decent job of avoiding Pat Paul and just getting a little bit on there. That's really all you need out of that block. So, it doesn't look like a lot, and it's not, but still a good job of just working with Pat Paul. The biggest part there is for Rucci to be able to stay kind of flat down the line, but still let Paul get around, which is what he does, right, and gets that right hand on there just enough to seal that defensive end to the inside. And then once again, we're off to the races with Devon Achan. And like I said, we'll come back and summarize at the end. Just realized I had one more of Rucci before we move on. As we get into the Dulcich clips, this is the first one. And this is just going to be a jet sweep to the left. You can see Dulcich on the left side there as we get back to the top of the video. So we're faking it to the right with Jalen Wright. We're bringing Achan in motion here. And we're just getting Dulcich out here on a lead block. And even though he is lined up in line as a Y tight end, this is really more of the type of blocks they ask out of these F tight ends, where they're getting out in space, attaching to a defensive back out here. And on this, he does a good job of getting attached to that defensive back and moving him out of the way for Devon Achan. Next one here is going to be a quick one. So Dulcich is actually off your screen out here, and we're just going to see him sealing to the outside. Nothing major here, but was doing what he was asking to play. And you can see him right out here, just doing a good job sealing him to the outside. So again, nothing major here, but this is an outside zone where he is helping to affect that play. He's getting out there and sealing that defender to the outside, not letting him get in there to be part of that play. This one is going to be a short yardage, 3rd and 1. So we are showing, the fake with the Achan there. This is the one we're getting Ingold inside zone to the right. We're going to get Dulcich coming in motion over here, and he's going to set up. All that he really needs to do is to try to cut off this defender. And as we roll the play here, you're going to see that, he, not an awful job, right? He gets his head across a little bit, prevents just a straight shot at Ingold from him, but also not a great job here either. Would really like to see him get all the way across, get that left shoulder on him, and not have the gap there between him and Paul. In the end, it doesn't really affect the play, but if we're really breaking it down and looking at what the intent here from Dulcich, there's more meat on the bone on that play. And then this one's going to be that pin and pull to the right side where we're pinning there and getting a couple of guys out there. Dulcich on the backside here again. So same idea as that last play. All he needs to do is get out here and cut off from the backside of the play. And we'll see on this one that he does a better job of it on this play. Right. So now on that one, you can see where he's getting that left shoulder into the, basically the sternum of that defensive end. He's fighting all the way across, right, and creating a little bit of vertical movement, right? If we look at where the ball snapped, looking at where this defender's heels are, right, and then as the ball snapped, we're creating a little bit of vertical movement there towards the 25-yard line, but mainly cutting it off and not giving him that direct path to the running back. So a little better job on that one than we had on the last rep. And now we are getting tackle trap. So we're getting Pat Paul pulling out. We're going to get Rucci, as we talked about, trying to seal there. Dulcich, again, is just trying to seal in the backside. We're going to see a lot of that. With Dulcich and what they ask the F tight ends to do. And on this, you can see this is exactly what you want out of this. Wins position off the snap, right? Able to flip the hips around and seal. Obviously, he's going to face better defensive ends when it comes to having to do this, but still think this is a step in the right direction of what you want to be able to see out of the backside tight end, your F tight end in this case. This one, I think we have some confusion. So this is going to be a long trap play where Jonah is coming and pulling out to kick out. We're getting down blocks from everybody else. Dulcich, I think, gets a little confused because I think that nope, he's gone. Brewer works up a little bit. I think ideally Dulcich gets down to here, but as Poyer steps down, looks like Dulcich gets a little confused there to me as we go through. You can see he's going to bluff Bosa on the end. And then as he steps down there, typically you'd see him work further into Milano, and then you have, Westbrook Akine coming in that would pick up Poyer. I think that Dulcich maybe realized that Poyer was getting further to the inside. Wouldn't have been the worst thing for him to pick up Poyer, but you can see that with that bluff, that Dulcich then puts himself off balance enough that he ends up not being able to get either of them. So something that needs to be cleaned up there as well for him. So this is going to be outside zone away from Dulcich again. Same idea here, stepping to the play side, looking to cut something off. Nothing immediate. I like the way that he turns, that he kind of reverses the other way, as opposed to climbing up there, right? This defender's kind of sitting back, no reason to take off out there. I kind of like this reverse pivot. We know that Bosa, very good athlete, very capable of chasing it down from the backside. So not a big block by any means here. I just like the awareness from Dulcich to reverse over his left shoulder and get back into that block. So just something to, kind of take note of there. On this one, we're going to get some split flow action. So Dulcich lined up over here at the snap of the ball is going to come behind the line of scrimmage, and he's looking to, kick out or cut off that defensive end as everybody else is zoning to the right. So as the play starts here, you're going to see Dulcich coming across the line. Not doing the worst job here, right? We always talk about when we're pulling, if you're pulling left, you want to hit with your left shoulder. Pull left, hit left is, what we say, pull right, hit right. In this case, he's going to his left. You can see that he's trying to get a good angle there. Just doesn't really connect with it very well. And that defensive end does get back, not upfield, but downfield a little bit there. So he kind of, creates a tougher angle that helps Dulcich a little bit. Would obviously like to see him be able to square that up a little more as opposed to diving into it and missing, but we've seen far worse in these split flow actions, so I'll take it for now from Dulcich. And then on this one, we are going to get more split flow action. We're going to see a little bit of improvement from it. So Achane is going to get tackled in the backfield. We're not going to talk about that part too much. But again, same idea that Dulcich is coming across, and we're going to see a little better execution here on it. Right now, he's able to square that defensive end up a little bit. Defensive end does not get downfield the same way that he does, but now he's pulling right, hitting right, and just kind of squares him. Again, not a big block there, but I feel like just a little better in terms of the execution over the last time we saw him run that split flow action. Another outside zone here where Dulcich is on the backside of it. So this is going to be outside zone to the right. And we're going to get the same type of play that we saw earlier where he is stepping, looking to cut something off. Got the eyes on the second level a little bit. Nothing is, trying to go in front of him. So now he can just peel back and get back into the action. So nothing big there, just pointing it out once again the way that he's doing that. And then this is going to be the counter solid where Rucci is going to slip on the front side of it. Dulcich is going to be pulling around. And on this one, right, all I'm going to say about Dulcich is that he does a good job of adjusting to the play, right? In an ideal scenario, as we talked about when we were looking at Rucci, that we would get the down block from Borum there, we'd get a seal there, and it would be Dulcich coming through and leading up through ideally to Matt Milano. But because of everything that happened, because Borum was not able to block down, because Rucci motions back and slips, right, everything ends up completely off course with it. And, sometimes when you get something like that, then Dulcich, being the puller, may still try to turn this up and lead it, and then we get it tackled for a loss. But I like the way that Dulcich recognizes what's happening, realizes that he can't turn it up, and does a good job. We talked about Hayden Rucci just being part of that human wall when everything went to crap there. And Dulcich, gets some points there for being part of that wall as well and giving Achane a chance to, be a little jitterbug and get out of there and make Jordan Poyer miss. Always fun watching that part of it. I think this is going to be the only time they ran outside zone to Dulcich's side. And you can see that we have Brunskill in here as the sixth tight end. Everybody's going play side here. This defender is going to spike to the inside. I think ideally what you end up with would be a combo here working up to Poyer. I think that Westbrook Akine, I don't know if he's supposed to be blocking down on Poyer or not, but we end up kind of getting multiple players looking at Poyer kind of unnecessarily. I think Brunskill does a good job of picking up the defensive back slanting to the inside, but then Dulcich kind of gets caught in no man's land, right? Maybe you could have said that he could have continued to the play side and helped to seal there, but really just ends up blocking nobody at all. So this is one that I would say is one they need to look at in the film room. They, as you can see, they've not run a lot of outside zone to Dulcich's side, so it's not something that he's going to be super familiar with. But this is one of those deals that you can look at on tape and you can sort it out so that next time you get out on the game field, that hopefully you're able to run this outside zone and, with Brunskill as that sixth offensive lineman, get Dulcich up on one of these defensive backs and, get a body on a body and make it look a lot better than what it does here. And then last one here for Dulcich, and this was also the last one that we did for Hayden Rucci, where we're running crack toss, so he becomes the crack. We're getting Paul getting out here. We're getting Dulcich getting out here. And there's a little bit of confusion between Paul and Dulcich regarding number 46 here that you're going to see. And as they get to the outside here, we get Dulcich, Rucci pinning, right? 46 is following Dulcich out, so I think that's why Paul lets him go. But I think that because Paul has his hands on him, that Dulcich thinks that he's going to just continue to widen him out. Dulcich works out to Cole Bishop and attaches to him. So nothing necessarily real great or real awful with this rep, but just another one that, we don't see him on the play side of runs very often, and we're seeing, some mix-ups in terms of assignments that hopefully we can see continue, because we saw from that first play that he is capable of getting to that next level and willing as a blocker, especially, against these smaller defensive backs. Just one of those things that hopefully we can continue to see him clean up. All right, so that's going to wrap up our tight end film reviews. Like I said, obviously they are part of the passing game, but there's plenty of other guys that can go out there and analyze that for you. I like to focus more on the blocking. I think that's the most important thing for a tight end in this offense. When we go back and we look at those Hayden Rucci ones, solid performance, right? Like I said, from the very beginning, I am still a very big fan of Julian Hill. I'm not sure that Hayden Rucci is better than Julian Hill right now. I think that they are asking less of Hayden Rucci. I'd really like to see Julian Hill in that same type of role, but I do think that Rucci is developing very much into a good number 2 type tight end that can continue to progress and eventually become a starting tight end in this league. I think that he should be active as the first or second Y for the remainder of this game, and then how well Julian Hill performs when he returns, really that just determines how much 6 offensive line stuff they do with Dan Brunskill. Now, Greg Dulcich, on the other hand, that's the one where I think there's really some long-term high ceiling potential. He obviously shows some skills in the passing game. He has that draft pedigree, a guy that's battled injuries, but he shows himself as a willing blocker, and he's never going to be, strong side, outside zone, wide tight end material. But when you look at the way that the Dolphins were using him against the Bills, I think there's definitely a model there that you can continue to build upon, and that, he may not be quite the receiving threat that Darren Waller is right now, but Darren Waller doesn't have the longevity that Dulcich is going to have. So, overall, tight ends like where they are right now. Obviously, still need to continue to see some growth from them. I think that Hayden Rucci right now is in a very good spot as a number 2 Y tight end type of role. And I think that Greg Dulcich should be, continue to, be evaluated, looking at him as a possible future of the F position, when it comes to the tight ends in this offense. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, and we'll talk again soon.